All right, welcome back to Worldview. We do apologize for that technical glitch at the beginning, but let's swiftly carry on with our world press. We were taking a look at CNN and their leading headline, which is unfinished business of peace. That is Mahmoud Abbas, who is the leader within Palestinian, and Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel. So this specific article is talking in regards to the history behind Israel as well as Palestine. At some point, they were on two different sides, but in 1993, they came together and signed the Oslo Accord, which brought about peace. In fact, President Barack Obama called the presence of Mahmoud Abbas, and I quote, a gesture of a reminder of the unfinished business of peace. Of course, thereafter, the real question that is being asked here is whether the peace will be buried with Perez, and what does Perez mean to the country of Israel? All the details are founded in CNN under that article of the finished business of peace. All right, moving away from CNN, let's swiftly take you to New Times, Rwanda, where one of the leading headlines is Rwanda urged to visit tourist attractions. Just this week, on 27th of September to be more specific, the world was celebrating World Tourism Day. In Rwanda, they were encouraging their local citizens to participate more in local tourism and make sure they uphold it highly. Why? Because most of Rwanda's economy, or rather, most of tourism within Rwanda is centered within socio-economic development, as well as to make sure to encourage Rwandans to take part within their local tourism. They are encouraging free transport as well as free site access. Of course, this is a way of driving national tourism within Rwanda as a country in general. So all the details on Rwanda's tourism can be found on the New Times in Rwanda. All right, away from that, let's also head over to BBC, where they're carrying the top story of the day, which is leaders Lord Perez at Jerusalem funeral. We know about 70,000 plus leaders from across the globe attended this morning funeral for Perez. We had the likes of Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu even gave a speech. Barack Obama talked. Bill Clinton was there. Just to mention a few, Prince Charles was also in the presence. But even Africa was well represented with representatives from Ethiopia, Sudan, as well as Botswana, to mention a few. So if you want to take a look at all the eulogies that most global leaders had in regards to Shimon Peres, who was buried today, that can be found on BBC. All right, away from BBC, let's take you to Mail Online, where it's in regards to still Bill Clinton praises Shimon Peres as a wise champion of humanity, as 70 world leaders line up to see former Israeli leader laid to rest, and Netanyahu and Palestine Abbas share a historic handshake. Of course, still on this, you'll be able to find the latest in regards to the Duck and Duchess of Cambridge, who have spent the most of their week in Canada this week, and the fact that Charlotte was able to speak her first word in public and walk around made quite an interesting story right there. But that is all that we had for you here on World Press for today. I'll hand you over back to Akisa. Akisa?
Thank you very much, Zinzi, for that. Many thanks, Zinzi Kibiku, of course, giving us what the top international press has given priority today. And most of it borders on the funeral of the late Shimon Peres. Now, a reminder of our top international story. This hour, world leaders have hailed the vision of the late Israeli leader, Shimon Peres, as he was laid to rest 3 days after he died at the age of 93. In an emotional address, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that while Israel and the world grieves for Peres, there was hope in his legacy. A large number of foreign dignitaries, including U.S. President Barack Obama and Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas, eulogized Peres at the state funeral, in Jerusalem. Former U.S. President Bill Clinton, who helped negotiate the Oslo peace accords between Israel and the Palestinians in the 1990s that led to a Nobel Peace Prize for Shimon Peres, said he was Israel's biggest dreamer.
But, ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Barack Obama, President of the United States of America, אני מתכבד להזמין את נשיא ארצות הברית ברק אובמה להיכנס אל רחבת הטקס. שמעון פרס.
All right. right, that is the biggest story we have this and joining me now in studio is Abel Ayayo, is a researcher and analyst from the Center for African Progress. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you so much.
So here is where we take a look at stories that have made headlines throughout the week, international stories, of course. What was the biggest for you?
Well, of course, the biggest story is the burial of Shimon Peres. But again, within the continent, it's what's going on in Gabon. Yes.
And how would you rate, let's just first start with the burial, of course, so that we can get to the other things.
Yeah.
Looking at the turnout of the burial, the things that were said there, we safe to say that Shimon Peres has left quite a legacy.
Yes, he has. Now, number one, it's in 3 years. That is quite a long time. And then it's dedicated 70 years to service of Israel. So that is a long period again to have been a politician and a leader. He's been an interim prime minister, he's been a prime minister and a president. And then, of course, he left some guidelines on what was supposed to be done during his burial. Leaders were invited, they've made very wonderful speeches, and they've emphasized the need for peace. So that is quite a legacy for an old man.
What would be the one thing that the people of Israel and would have in their minds when they think about Shimon Peres? He has a very big CV. He's worked in the cabinet. He's done almost everything, every top job you would have in that particular country.
Yeah. The lasting memory that Israelis are going to have is the distinction of dedication to peace. Just like Clinton called him the biggest dreamer, Peres was able to see an Israel whereby there was peace with the Palestinians and the rest of the neighbors. He kept on emphasizing that, he kept on stressing that, until I think his death. Bringing all the leaders together was meant again to emphasize the need to have that peaceful coexistence between Israel and its leaders. So that is a legacy I think is left, the dedication to peace. It's not been achieved, but I think they'll be able to remember that over time.
So speaking of the peace, now that they've bid farewell to him and it continues to be very, very much elusive, are we seeing the leadership of Israel, countries like Pakistan, and of course the other neighbors trying to ensure that finally they achieve this peace as what Shimon Peres stripped off?
That is going to be tough. Now, we have the same prime minister who's been described by many people as a hardliner. And then, of course, we have Iran still working with Hamas and weakening Abbas.
Yeah.
So you can expect the same issues to go on. Of course, leaders have talked about the dedication to peace, talk about, again, sitting down and trying to give the best. But
Will that mean anything to the people?
I don't think it's going to mean much. It's not going to mean much because Abbas has to be strong enough to undermine Hamas from within the Palestinian territory. Then he can become a strong bargainer. So once Netanyahu gets to realize Abbas is a strong bargainer and he can control the elements within the Palestinian territory from attacking Israel, I think that they can be able to sit down and agree. For now, it's not going to work.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's go to something else that was very exciting this week. That was the U.S. presidential debate between Democrat Hillary Clinton and Republican Donald Trump. It has been one of the biggest debates, 84 million views, and many people have been talking about it. It has been the center of a conversation, not only in the U.S., in Africa as well, the social media. How would you rate that? What exactly did that particular debate mean for even the other electoral processes in the other countries? Does it mean that the game has been changed?
Now, the reason as to why the viewership was so high is because of Trump.
Of course.
He's a showman.
Of course.
Yeah, even the media outlets in the US like him because whenever he has a show, he appears somewhere, the ratings go up. People like watching him. Now, again, the main thing which we can learn as other countries.
Yeah, the lessons we can pick from that
is what we call the respect to the process of democracy. You don't say so and so cannot be a leader. It's all about the will of the people. Now, if it was maybe the top establishment guy saying, let's pick so and so, Trump couldn't have been given the ticket. But because the people decided it's him, he's gone all the way. Just like here we have issues of the Nairobi gubernatorial seat.
Yes.
Someone saying, oh, Sonko cannot be governed and all that. If the people decide, so be it. The voice of the people is always the voice of God. That is what Americans think. So that is a lesson we can learn as Kenyans, and I think the rest of the world.
Other African countries have tried holding debates for people who want elective positions. Not even here in Kenya, we're getting into an electoral period in come 2017. We've already started the process.
Yeah.
From how Clinton and Trump debated the issues, the attacks, is there anything we can learn from there?
Yeah. Now, for political strategists for the various camps, you can learn how you can attack your opponents. For example, the Democrats have been so effective in playing up again and again the negative side of Trump. And Clinton was quick to always bring them up during the debate. So that reminded people watching that we're dealing with a bad person. That is the aim of the reminding that was taking place from moment to moment. Like, oh, he's been outsourcing jobs to China, or, you know, he was not employing, you know, black people, or he said this and all that. Now, in Kenya, debates have not gotten the kind of significance that we can see in the US. But I think Kenya is making tremendous progress compared to the rest of Africa.
Yes.
And we need to push along those lines. Let's get our leaders standing before us and explaining whatever they have to do for us, instead of small politics of malice and tribe. We can move, and we're moving. Yes.
From that, could we confidently say that that was a debate best, an issue-based debate? From your, of course, analysis.
If we call it so, I think I'll give it like 45%. It was so much about character, personal attacks and all that. Oh, you know, she's a liar, oh, he's a liar, and all that. Issues, of course, came in at some point, talk about the economy, jobs, and all that. But so much was dedicated to attacking the person. And that is how American politics, of course, plays out most of the time.
Will we be expecting anything different between now and October 9th, when there's going to be another face-off between the two?
Yes, I think, again, the moderator, of course, plays a very big role.
Yeah.
When you go personal, and it's supposed to be an issue-based kind of conversation, he can stop you. But this time around, because it was the first one, and there were so many issues, you know, there's a lot of tension in the US now. Let's call it racial tension.
Yes.
The murder of black men and all that. So I think it had to go the way it went. So the next one, most likely, will focus so much on issues like foreign policy and all that. So there'll be a difference. The question that we might maybe want to respond to is, will it make a difference as far as voting is concerned?
Yeah.
The answer is no.
Okay. October 9th is not too far off.
Yeah.
It's barely 2 weeks from now, and we will be seeing how that debate will go, whether it will surpass the 84 million viewership, whether it will be issue-based. It's a matter of wait and see. All right, let's get back into the continent.
Yes.
Sudan was also a very big story. Amnesty International has been conducting investigations there since January, and is now accusing the Sudanese government of using chemical weapons to attack its own people. What was your initial reaction to that report by Amnesty International?
I'm not surprised, because, you know, as bad things were happening in Sudan, the world was watching. Again, it reminds you of what happened back in 1994 during the Rwandese genocide. So when all that was happening, the world was watching and making a lot of noise. So I'm not surprised by the findings. All I can say is I could want to see action being taken, but again, I'm pessimistic. It might not work.
Has the world ignored Sudan and the Darfur conflict? It has raged on for about 13 years now.
Yes.
Are we ignoring Sudan?
As Africans, we're not doing what we should. You know, we have to get tired of blaming the outside world for our problems. So the African Union, we've not done much, so we've ignored it. I think, again, because of the presence of conflicts in so many places. So there's no time.
There's so many
resources.
problems to deal with.
Yes. So there's nothing in terms of time and resources to invest in our place. And of course, the internal government is not supportive. They've actually played a role in killing their own people. And they've blocked outside, assistance. So the findings are, I think, correct. There has been a problem. It's too late. We've lost so many people. And, that is the tragedy of Africans. We wait for the outside world to come to help us.
When you talk about Darfur, the ICC question comes up automatically, because this is the very reason the International Criminal Court wants Bashir.
Yes.
And they've if so many countries that Bashir has visited, they've asked them to hand them over, but African countries have time and again refused to hand over Bashir. Are we to blame? Have we become complacent when it comes to this issue of Darfur and Bashir?
Again, yes. We've actually played a role in shielding Bashir. That means we've played a role implicitly or indirectly in advancing his crimes. Why? There is a problem of he who comes to equity must come with clean hands. So African leaders are not willing to arrest Bashir and hand him over because they also have problems. Like when he came to Kenya last time, our president and deputy president were not yet free. Now, last time I think he went to South Africa when Mandela was being buried.
Yes.
Yes, again, he was not arrested and handed over. And it's not like the ICC does not know the movements.
He was even in Uganda the other day for the swearing ceremony of Yoweri
So
Museveni.
the ICC needs to know how to do its own business instead of expecting African countries to arrest him and hand him over. It's not going to happen.
But are their hands tied? Are the ICC's hands tied when it comes to this particular issue of arresting Bashir?
ICC is basically a toothless bulldog. It's not going to change anything. It's not going to do anything. The leaders can be compromised. That is not questionable. And again, they don't have a process. When a country is not cooperating in arresting someone who should be arrested, they need to do it on their own. They need some kind of force. They don't have that. If you go back to the International Criminal Tribunal of the former Yugoslavia, there was cooperation because some countries from the West, of course, played a role. There was some kind of active participation. We've not seen that in Africa and all that. So as much as we say they don't like Africans, they want to arrest African leaders and all that, it's not so much like that. Yeah, the likes of Milosevic were arrested and they died behind bars.
Yes.
So the only person we can talk about who's been taken by the ICC and processed is Taylor.
Yes, the only one.
That is it.
All right, and as the Darfur conflict rages on, in the neighboring South Sudan, things are not as good. We just saw Riek Machar, the former vice president, has called on the people to use armed rebellion against President Salva Kiir's government to try and oust President Salva Kiir's government. Is there a looming war or a crisis in South Sudan?
Yeah, that is a problem. Again, it boils down to the African Union, especially Kenya. I think it's time our president actually began taking some steps to control our neighbors, because we can do that. When Southern Sudan destabilizes completely and there's war, we're going to receive some of them here. And it's going to be a crisis, it's going to be a problem. Now, the appointment of Taban to replace Machar was a mistake. I'm very sure Kiir gets to consult the likes of our president and other neighbors.
Well, why do you think it was a mistake?
I think he was trying to undermine Machar, but it's not working because legitimately the person who's supposed to be handling the process, the negotiations and all that, is the vice president. So when he took off, all the president was supposed to do was to make sure he comes back. Of course, he gave him some guarantees, but he was not willing to come back, simply because he feared being killed. So, and he insisted, the vice president insisted on an international body to mediate, which is okay. That's a very legitimate claim to make when you fear for your life. It was not done. So what we have is a crisis which is likely to get to us. And the president of Southern Sudan should have been pressured to accept an international mediation force and then welcome the vice president and resolve the crisis. But so far, it's not being done. So we're likely to see more violence.
And we talk about conflicts. There's so many conflicts in the African continent. What you'd mentioned when we began this conversation, Gabon, Ali Bongo was sworn in earlier this week amid a lot of violence since when they went to the election, and after they cast their votes, a number of people have died. It's like electoral violence in Africa is a must-have. When an African country, most African countries, when they have an election, there's a result of electoral violence.
Yeah, again, we have a problem of institutions. They're very weak. In Gabon, it's, I think, a similar problem like what we had here. It's not very clear who won the election. For example, when you look at the region of the president, Ali Bongo, there was 99.9% voter turnout in an election where the turnout was below 60%, around 59 point something. So the question becomes, how was it possible for the guys from the president's region to turn out up to 99.9%?